Imagine you are a grieving mother who just lost your young, vibrant, beautiful daughter who had just gotten married. She had her whole life ahead of her, and you were so excited of the idea of having grandchildren one day. Instead of having new life enter the world, your daughter's life made its final exit. And to top it off, in a mysterious manner, grief-stricken, you pray for weeks that you will see your daughter one last time to help get a little bit of clarity and understanding on how exactly she passed. Then, one night, you drift off into a deep sleep. In your dream state, you receive the answers to your prayers. You receive clarity and are delivered the most grueling message. Your young, beautiful, vibrant daughter did not die of natural causes. She was, in fact, murdered. Heartbroken and shook, you leave no stone unturned and set off on a mission to get justice for your baby girl. I am your host, Carrie, and this is Unlocking the Paranormal. If this is your first time here, I appreciate you checking out the podcast. And if you are a returning listener, I appreciate you stopping back to listen to another episode. This is kind of a different episode than normal. This has a little bit of a mix of true crime and, well, ghostly mystery. On a bitter, bone-chilling Saturday morning, January 23rd, 1897, an unsettling request shattered the stillness of the hour. Anderson Andy Jones, a young neighbor of the Shue family, had been summoned again and again by Erasmus Trout Shue. And because I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his first name correctly, I'm just going to refer to him as Trout. Trout's insistence was unusual, almost frantic. He begged Andy to visit the Shue household to gather eggs and check if Miss Shue required anything from the store. When Andy finally crossed the frost-laden threshold of the Shue homestead, a heavy, unnatural silence clung to the air. There were no eggs to gather, just an oppressive quiet that seemed to pulse through the cold wooden walls. A dark weight settled in his chest as he called out for Mrs. Shue. But there was no answer. Compelled by the growing sense of dread, Andy stepped further inside. Then, at the foot of the stairs, he found her. A lifeless form, crumpled and cold. And in that moment, Andy knew something awful had taken root within the Shue household. Her body lay unnervingly perfect, stretched out with an unnatural precision. Her feet were pressed together, one hand resting stiffly at her side, the other draped across her chest as if posed, her head tilted slightly to one side. Andy's breath hitched in his throat. Panic surged through his veins as he stumbled from the house, cold air cutting at his lungs. He ran to his mother, breathless and trembling, blurted out the dreadful truth. Mrs. Shue is dead. Without hesitation, Andy then hurried to the blacksmith shop, where Trout Shue was working. His words spilled out in a frantic tumble. Your wife, she's gone. Trout's face darkened as the news settled over him. His eyes flashed with something between shock and dread. Without a word, he dropped his tools and rushed towards the house. But his reaction when he arrived was, well, strange. He was visibly shattered, but his grief took on an unnatural edge. He wept bitterly, inconsolable, yet his behavior grew guarded, possessive. He ordered everyone out of the house, driving them away with sharp, frantic words. No one was to enter. No one was to disturb her. And then, in a voice that trembled between grief and command, he summoned the local doctor, Dr. Knapp. The urgency in his tone was unmistakable and unsettling. Dr. Knapp took nearly an hour to arrive at the Shue's residence. When he finally got there, Mr. Shue had already begun prepping Zona in funeral attire. One might expect to arrive to the scene with the body in place of where it was found, but that was not the case. Mr. Shue had what some articles claimed washed or cleaned her body, brought her body to their bedroom, dressed her, and then arranged her on their bed. His clothing choice at the time was perhaps not as odd as his immediate actions. That is until much later. He had made preparations for her burial and dressed her in a high-neck dress with a rigid collar and had placed a veil over her face. The veil was much too large, and so he tied a big bow under her chin. This somehow did not seem to raise any suspicion with the doctor, who attempted to then resuscitate Zona. However, it was evident that she was deceased. As Dr. Knapp proceeded with his examination of the body, his efforts to assess the head and neck area were obstructed by Mr. Shue, who was holding her head and weeping, reacting aggressively whenever the doctor attempted to approach. After inspecting the remainder of her body, he discovered nothing significant. Upon his first examination, Dr. Knapp allegedly declared that Zona's cause of death was either heart disease or a fainting spell. Nonetheless, in the official Greenbrier County death book, her cause of death was recorded as childbirth. Additionally, it was reported that Dr. Knapp had been treating Zona for an unspecified ailment for weeks prior. Yet, there are no records to substantiate this, nor are there any signatures or remarks from Dr. Knapp on Zona's official death record. Elva's remains were returned to her childhood residence on Little Sewell Mountain for burial, but not without an unusual funeral, during which her husband displayed odd behavior. He wandered near the casket, adjusting Zona's head and neck. Besides the collar and veil, he draped a scarf over her head and neck. He insisted it was her favorite and that she would have preferred to wear it in her final resting place. He supported her head first with the pillow and then with the rolled-up cloth. Not only that, he banned anyone from touching Zona's body. At one point, people started to observe that Zona's neck appeared unusual, saggy, and unstable, along with the bruise on her cheek that seemed to have come from out of nowhere. Although rumors circulated within the community regarding Trout that he had a violent nature and his strange behavior during the wake and funeral, it appeared to be a concluded matter. Simply an unfortunate event. That was the extent of it. While this was indeed peculiar behavior, most attendees likely attributed it to the grieving process, with the exception of one. Zona's mother, Mary Jane Heaster. Everyone except for Mary Jane Heaster, Elva's mother, held a different opinion. She had always disapproved of Trout and firmly believed without any proof that he was responsible for her daughter's murder. How she wished Zona could share what had occurred. She took to prayer and prayed for Zona to somehow return from the grave and disclose the truth to her. Each evening she prayed. She prayed and prayed and prayed. She prayed for weeks until, at last, her prayers were fulfilled. Mary reported that Zona visited her in her dreams for 4 consecutive nights to share her story. Allegedly, the spirit initially appeared as a glowing light, slowly transforming into a human shape, and noticing a cold chill in the air. As reported by Mary Jane, she started experiencing visions in which Zona manifested and conveyed the following message to her. He was mad that she didn't have no meat cooked for supper. And she said, I had plenty. Don't you think that he was mad and just took down all my nice things and packed them away and ruined them? She came 4 times and 4 nights. But the second night she told me that her neck was squeezed off at the first joint. And it was just as she told me. Mary Heaster and her brother-in-law, Johnson Heaster, approached Lewisburg prosecutor John A. Preston, who initially found the account hard to believe. However, after several hours of questioning, Mrs. Heaster managed to persuade him that there was enough reason to launch an investigation. Preston started inquiring around the town. Trout's acquaintances and neighbors informed Preston of the peculiar conduct he exhibited at the funeral, and Dr. Knapp acknowledged that his examination had not been thorough. This was enough for Preston to order an autopsy. An exhumation was mandated, and a jury for the inquest was convened. The Greenbrier Independent reported that Trout Shue expressed strong objections, but it was made clear to him that he would be required to participate in the inquest if he did not comply voluntarily. In response, he stated that he understood he would be arrested and, quote, but they will not be able to prove I did it. This thoughtless remark suggested that he was at least aware of the fact that his wife had been murdered. In the town's 1-room schoolhouse, Dr. Knapp and 2 other doctors examined the body thoroughly. A local newspaper, the Pocahontas Times, later reported that, quote, on the throat were the marks of fingers, indicating that she had been choked, that the neck was dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. The ligaments were torn and ruptured. The windpipe had been crushed at the point in front of the neck. All other portions and organs of the body were apparently in a perfectly healthy state. End quote. It was now very evident that Zona's death was not due to natural causes. Yet, there were no clues identifying the murderer, nor any witnesses to the event. Trout's peculiar actions following Zona's death lingered in Preston's thoughts and raised some suspicions about him. Meanwhile, Zona's mother had precisely described how her daughter was killed prior to the autopsy being conducted. Nowadays, that would be perceived as a red flag. Perhaps she was the one responsible, and the ghost story was a cunning scheme to set up Trout, someone she already disliked. At any rate, Mr. Shue was immediately arrested and remained in prison until the trial. 5 months after Zona was found dead, Trout went on trial for her murder. While in prison, awaiting his trial, he boasted about wanting to have at least 7 wives. Whenever I hear stories about wives, girlfriends, or significant others going missing or being murdered, I always wondered, how did they get there? How did things get to a point in their life that someone wanted them dead? In October 1896, the young 23-year-old Zona Heaster went to town for an errand where she encountered and was charmed by a 37-year-old blacksmith, Erasmus Trout Shue. Despite the disapproval of Mary Jane, Zona's mother, the couple eloped just weeks afterward on Tuesday, October 21st, 1896. Zona wore the same high-collared burgundy-colored dress that her husband dressed her in after her death. Shortly after the wedding, they moved into a residence close to the Shue's blacksmith shop. There are very few other details about Zona's life prior to meeting Trout. One source mentions that Zona had a baby boy out of wedlock on November 29th, 1895, which was almost a year before she and Trout had ever met. Of the articles that I read, there is nothing said about this boy, and if he was still in her life or even alive at the time of her death. It was only a short 3 months later, after her marriage, that Zona was found dead. It's a fair question to ask if Trout would be the type of person to kill his wife. Was there anything else about his character or past that made him suspicious, despite how he reacted to Zona's death with being so distraught? The short answer is yes. I am sure none of you are surprised. Trout had been married twice previously. The exact details of his marriages vary depending on the source. All, at the very least, indicate both marriages ended in suspicion and that Trout was kind of a piece of crap. According to some sources, the first marriage ended in a divorce, while Trout was incarcerated for horse theft. The ex-wife later informed the police that Trout was very, very abusive and frequently assaulted her during their marriage. Other articles reported that he left his first wife after the birth of his first child and started a new life without them. His second marriage lasted only 8 months and concluded with the suspicious death of his wife. It was reported by a few sources that he accidentally dropped a brick on her head while doing repairs on the roof of their home. Some sources indicate that his second wife passed away while assisting Trout with chimney repairs. He was atop the chimney, and his wife was putting rocks into a basket connected to a rope. As the basket was pulled up, it tilted and caused a rock to fall on her head. This same source claims that his first wife reportedly died from a fractured neck after falling off a haystack. No matter what the story may be, his past is nothing but suspicious, with the death of his previous wife and his abusive background. Even though these details were circumstantial, they were sufficient for Preston to bring him to trial. The trial was nothing less than sensational. During Mary Heaster's testimony, she was asked the following: "Do you think that you actually saw her in the flesh and blood?" And she responded, "Yes, sir, I do. I told them the very dress that she was killed in, and when she went to leave me, she turned her head completely around and looked at me like she wanted me to know all about it." Imagine seeing that. Imagine seeing that as your child. That has got to be absolutely terrifying, saddening, and grotesque all at once. Then she continues and says, "The first time she came, she seemed that she did not want to tell me as much about it as she did afterwards. The last night she was there, she told me that she did everything she could do. And I am satisfied that she did do all that too. The questioning continued. She was then asked, "Now, I would like, if I could, to get you to say that these were 4 dreams and not 4 visions or appearances of your daughter in the flesh and blood." And she responded with, "I am not going to say that. I am not going to lie." Mary went on and provided thorough descriptions of Zona's home and the surrounding land, even though she asserted that she had never been to her daughter's place, at least not until about a month after her death. Her testimony was impactful and convincing. And given that Zona's mother was a respected and devout Christian, her words were taken as fact, making these significant accounts the most compelling evidence in the case. As for Trout himself, he spent the entire afternoon testifying. He was allowed to speak freely and went into great detail, emphasizing trivial events. As far as what other witnessed and their claims, he rejected most of what was claimed and the accusations against him. He asserted that the prosecution was driven by malice. He frivolently maintained his innocence, but admitted that he wasn't perfect and acknowledged that he had previously served time in prison for theft. He insisted that he deeply loved his wife and would never kill her. He called upon God as his witness and urged the jury to look into his eyes and then determine his guilt. But despite all of this, his testimony and demeanor left a negative impression on those in attendance. The trial lasted 8 days, and following the presentation of evidence from both parties, it only took the jury 1 hour and 10 minutes before returning with a conviction for first-degree murder. It is quoted in the Greenbrier Independent, July 8, 1897, that though the evidence was entirely circumstantial, the verdict meets general approval, as all who heard the evidence are satisfied of the prisoner's guilt. Trout received a life sentence in the West Virginia State Penitentiary, located in Moundsville. However, some residents believed that true justice had not been achieved and sought to take action themselves. They felt he deserved to be hanged for the crime he committed against Zona, which led a group of local citizens to form a lynch mob. The intention was to go to the county jail, where Trout was being held, take him outside and, quote, hang him. A local individual, George Harrar, who resided near the Meadow Bluff area where the mob had gathered, learned about the mob's intentions to storm the jail. He quickly rode to the residence of the local sheriff, Sheriff Nickel, who also lived in Meadow Bluff, in an effort to prevent the mob from heading to the jail. In the edition of the Greenbrier Independent dated July 15, 1897, the mob incident is described as follows. Mr. Nickel and Mr. Harrar then headed towards Lewisburg and had to pass the gathering place for the lynchers. Upon their arrival around 9 o'clock, they encountered several members of the mob already present. They managed to pass by without incident but were later identified. A few minutes later, 4 members of the mob chased them down, caught up to them, and ordered them to stop. The sheriff drew his pistol and was about to shoot when he recognized one of the assailants. Not wanting to injure or kill him, he opted for more moral persuasion instead. The group complied and were taken back to the home of Mr. D.A. Dwyer, I think I'm saying that right, where after extensive discussion, the sheriff was able to persuade them to disperse and return home. The article indicated that there were about 10 to 20 men hiding out in the trees, yet waiting to get their hands on Trout. Deputy Sheriff John G. Dwyer received word about the gathering mob and had successfully transported Trout to a secure location in the woods a mile or 2 away from town. After the foiled lynching, Trout was then escorted to West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, where he remained until his death in the spring of 1900. reportedly from an outbreak of what some sources report tuberculosis. One of the 6 jurors who attended the exhumation of Zona's body described himself as a neighbor and a friend of Mary Jane. He stated in a letter dated October 11, 1897, to Richard Hodgson, the secretary of the American Society for Psychological Research, that Mrs. M.J. Heaster informed me about her vision or dream approximately 10 days to 2 weeks prior to the body of her daughter being exhumed and examined. I was one of the 6 jurors involved in the inspection of the body and heard her account before she was aware of what we had discovered. In summary, I would say upon examination that we found every detail exactly how Mrs. Heaster had previously shared with several individuals, including myself, except for the hollow space situated above and behind the plank in the cellar, where we found nothing, despite thorough searching. Mrs. Heaster is a close neighbor of mine, a daughter of an English sailor, and is a courageous and determined woman as I have ever encountered. So what was this? A mother's intuition? A psychic dream? A man set up by his mother-in-law for a crime he did not commit? Or a vengeful spirit who came back to expose and seek justice for her murder? As one looks back upon this strange case and is reminded of the old cliche, the dead tell no tales, Zona Heaster's spirit becomes a notable exception to the rule. I firmly believe that Zona returned to seek justice, and her mother's grief led her close enough to the veil that she was able to see her daughter's spirit. My only wish is that more spirits would do the same. How bittersweet of justice would that be, to be able to come back and get justice for your murder? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe a spirit got justice in the afterlife? Or do you think Zona's mother was sick and twisted and she did kill her daughter and out of anger and spite and somehow managed to pin it on the con man husband? Before I end the episode, be on the lookout for some exciting new episodes coming up and some exciting announcements. Don't forget to check out the merch shop before the current designs are switched out. And I do thank you for embarking on this chilling journey to unlocking the paranormal mysteries of the world. Beyond this episode lies a realm of enigmas waiting to be unveiled. For a full list of the episode source material, head over to the Unlocking the Paranormal podcast Facebook page. And for additional creepy content, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Unlocking the Paranormal. And be sure to never miss a moment of the unearthly tales that await by following our show wherever you get your podcast. This podcast is independently produced, and sharing it with friends, family, and your favorite coworkers helps me immensely. And don't forget to leave a review wherever you get your podcast. And if you would like to join in and become a paranormal pen pal to have your story shared on a Parapals episode, email your story to unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will venture further into the labyrinth of the supernatural. Until next time, stay curious, embark on the journey, and may you find the key to unlocking the paranormal.